From all walks of life, the Guard is always ready to respond to local or national emergencies. We protect the homeland. We're always there when called upon, and in every state and territory, we stand guard for our communities. To learn more, log on to nationalguard.com. Sponsored by the Florida Army National Guard, aired by the Florida Association of Broadcasters and this station.
What you want to know. What you need to know.
Talk 1470 WNN.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. AMP2.tv presents Tell Us Your Business, where you're invited on the air to tell us what makes your business stand out in the community. It's important we hear from you to tell us all we need to know about what you do best. Tell Us Your Business uses the latest radio and television production systems, and all shows can be seen on amp2.tv. If you have a question for our guest, call 888-565-1470. Now, let's get ready as our guest hits the airwaves and informs us about what we need to know on Tell Us Your Business.
Hi, and welcome to Tell Us Your Biz. I'm Yolanda Santana. I am in the IT industry, and I have over 15 years of IT experience. I'm currently working as an account executive for a company called NetSense IT. Today on Tell Us Your Biz, I have a special guest, Dan Lopez. Dan, would you tell us what you do?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on the show, first and foremost. Dan Lopez. I am the president of a consultancy firm called Allure Business Consulting. I've been doing HR for over 32 years now and pretty much consider myself a true generalist in a sense that I've dabbled with benefits and payroll and risk management, employee relations, training, succession planning, the works. So I'm very happy to be here and talk about my business and talk about the world of HR and how it affects businesses.
Fantastic. I'm happy to have you. Today, I think you wanted to talk about something in particular.
Right. I do. Pretty much there is a disconnect, I believe, with HR professionals and organizations. If you dig deep enough, you'll realize that companies out there, they're all different, how they want to use their HR professionals. For example, some organizations just want to use an HR professional like a book or an encyclopedia. Okay, I'm going to pull the book on the encyclopedia whenever I need it. Which is not a good thing. That's something that Jack Welch, if you guys all know Jack Welch, former chairman and CEO of General Electric, he did a conference, an HR conference once, and he said something very profound and very important. And what he said was that HR has to be a forefront. They got to be in the forefront of all businesses, all decision makers within the organization, because everything ultimately comes back around to people. And you can't run a company without people. So there is a disconnect, I think, in some organizations. Some of them are small, medium, and large companies, and they all have the mindset of how an HR professional should be used. So there are a lot of things that plague an organization as a result of a poor relationship between the HR professionals and the leaders of the organization. So that's pretty much what I really want to dig into today.
Okay. So they have a hard time keeping their HR properly informed on serious matters. Mm-hmm. But why is that?
Well, a lot of it is trusts, lack of trust and poor relationships. Again, there's sometimes we HR professionals are looked upon like the party poopers. Oh, I got a great idea. We got this great department we want to open up. We want to bring in the best of the best and run that department. It's going to be successful. It's going to bring a lot of revenue to our organization. And, they come up with that idea, which is a great one. However, then HR raises their hand as, I guess, so who are we going to be staffing for these positions? Well, that's where the party pooping comes in, because in essence, they'll have their idea as to who they select, but they're not really thinking about, okay, wait a minute, let's talk about the employees that are tenured, that have the degrees, that have the skill set, the knowledge base. They want to basically bring on people that they know are comfortable with, and that may not necessarily be the best team you can put together in the department. So we HR, sometimes they just don't want to talk to us about the gorilla really in the room, which is what is the right thing to do, who is the right people to get selected, and also how do we go about putting these teams together, to come up with this ultimate solution. So I think a lot of organizations end up failing as a result of putting together such departments and some qualified people in there. Everything could be resolved, of course. However, it's how you start that's very, very important, because are people going to feel? And therefore is the birth of a lot of employee relations issues. There's bitterness sometimes that gets birthed at that point in time, but other employees that feel that they're more qualified for a certain position and so forth. So it's all about trust. It's about relationships. And I think HR, Jack Welch hit it right on the button. You know what I mean? He says HR is crucial in bringing that unity together within the organization and make sure that everything is done correct. So that's what it is. Yeah.
Well, you sound really knowledgeable about this. Can you tell me an experience, an example, where you got this information from? I'm sure you got a lot of experience.
Yeah, I'm a big avid reader on leadership books. But we can talk about what we've learned and what we've read, but nothing hits home like experiences, So I'll give you, when I first started my career, I used to, I was very young, many moons ago, as you could tell.
Oh, yesterday, right?
Yeah, 32 years ago yesterday, yeah. But anyways, what's dynamic was that I fell into it's the regular role. You come in, you sit in your office, you check your emails, you start getting to work on projects and so forth, and then you go to lunch, and then that's it. But I learned very quickly that even though I was entry level, very young in my career in HR, one of the things I've learned was that, people see you as the company, no matter what level of HR. And it goes the same thing for leadership positions. People see you. You could be a team leader. You could be a first junior supervisor. You are the company, So from a personal experience, I used to do that, and I quickly learned through my interactions that I run into people in the hallways, and they're asking me questions that I'm like, okay, this is not my area, etc. But they expect it and they demand it. So I learned that very quickly. So I did start reading then a lot of books on leadership, on HR, effectiveness, employee relations, things of that sort. You know what I mean? And through the decades in my career, I've learned to dabble into every segment within HR, which is benefits, which is employee relations, which is training, which is recruiting, and a whole bunch of, development and issues, personal issues that come up in the lives of the employees, which is extremely important to have an HR professional and a leadership team that cares about the people, that actually invests in conversation with those individuals, and in the such just eventually try to help them find resolutions to their issues and so forth. Because let's face it, 9-to-5 jobs, they may exist, but the problems of life don't stop at 5 o'clock. They continue. There's a lot of things that go on in the workplace like that.
That's so true. Being in the IT industry for as long as I have been, I find that IT and HR, they work very close together.
Right.
One of my best friends is an HR director, I believe. And sorry if I get that wrong, Annie. But as you know, we work very closely together, is your experience. And we find, and I know that you've mentioned this to me before, sometimes there are certain attitudes in the workplace, what you call it, toxic.
Right.
And it spreads like a disease.
Right.
What would you do? How do you deal with toxic employees?
Well, you have to, one of the practices that I have done in my career is I always work the problem backwards. So here we are today, a toxic employee. So the next step is to get rid of that toxic employee. It's getting to the point where the company, the employees, and when the company leadership says there's a toxic employees, you still have to ask the question as to how does the employee base feel about that employee. Now, if you have common ground between the employer and leadership and the fellow coworkers and colleagues that are saying this person is toxic, then you definitely have a toxic employee in the foot, in the company. So how do you do that? Well, we work the problem backwards. By doing so, is like, where do we identify that the common ground that this person is a toxic employee? And then at that point in time, take a look at everything that has happened before then, and then you try to figure out, okay, where did we go wrong, or where did they go wrong? The problem with toxic employees is that a lot of times it's not a workplace only issue. It's usually a personal matter, something heavy going on at work, in their personal lives. Or there's been abuse, there's been neglect, there's been a whole plethora of issues that have occurred in their personal life. Could be drugs may be part of it, financial stresses and so forth. And they've got certain individuals, and I'm no psychiatrist, but it's easy to see that have developed into a bitterness type of personality or character, and they bring it to the workplace. And the minute that they say life is just too hard, I just don't care anymore, that's when they start being the stomping ground on their managers and the company and their fellow employees and so forth. So work the problem a little sooner. It all goes back. I'm going to springboard to recruiting. It's very important. And you mentioned technology, and you're absolutely correct. HR is a big part of the success of the individuals and the company, but so is IT. Finance is very important as well. That's why, it's always, I agree with you. It's IT, HR, but I also would add finance in the finance department.
Oh, definitely.
And so technology, the way that I've used it, and it's been extremely successful for me, is to have a very good applicant tracking system. One that's very good in protection of the information, because you're going to share a lot of information in there that's, confidential. So you have to have a good one, but also an applicant tracking system that, reaches out to a good number of job boards, because you want to basically reach out to a lot of people. And one of the mistakes that some organizations make, especially the smaller ones, is that they hire a career builder, or they hire a monster, and that's the only account they have. Fortunately, Indeed and Glassdoor take what they call skimming. They take positions, and they're also posted in their own particular websites as well. Mm-hmm. But I think that with a good applicant tracking system, you're going to get that. You're going to get some monster, some career builder postings. You're also going to get Glassdoor, but there's also a good number of job boards that are out there that will be the position will be posted. Craigslist, believe it or not, generates a lot of positions for blue collar workers and so forth, and even customer service type of positions, some administrative and so forth. So it starts off with an applicant tracking system. What I always encourage employers to do is to develop what I call knockout questions or job questions. Those consist of...
Hold that thought. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we'll get into those different systems. All right?
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Tell Us Your Biz. We'll be right back.
Please welcome a new sponsor to the show. It's AMP2 TV, the first and only internet network that's truly plugged in. When you're looking for a full-service internet television production company, discover AMP2 TV, a full-service production company that can provide all streaming videos in studio or remotely. They offer web page development, and they use all the latest platforms to help make your business selling points more powerful. They can do remotes and live streaming, as well as tape productions. Let AMP2 TV handle all of your television production needs. Choose from a variety of creative TV and radio packages and see why AMP2 TV works with many major companies, including Comcast, Bravo, and Fox 29, as well as individuals and businesses of all types and sizes. To see samples of their work or to find out more, visit their website at amp2.tv. That's AMP2.tv. Or call them at 1-866-224-5422. That's 866-224-5422.
You are listening to Tell Us Your Business, where our invited guests share all the knowledge of their business and how important it is what they do in our community. If you want to be part of the conversation, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and tell us what's on your mind. Now, back to Tell Us Your Business.
Hi, and welcome back to Tell Us Your Biz. I'm Yolanda Santana, and I'm an account executive for an IT consulting company. You can reach me at 561-819-5396. And today we have Dan Lopez, an HR specialist and business consultant. We were talking about the applicant tracking system, but before, can you tell us how people can reach you?
Well, it's easy to reach me. I'm always answering my phone 24/7, and it could be 3 o'clock in the morning on Christmas, I'll answer my phone. The number you reach me is 561-654-3141, or my emails as well. All my emails go to my phone. So I love working. I'm no stranger to working many hours, and I'm always believe in service. So the best email for me is DLOPEZ, that's DLopez at allurebiz.com. You could also visit my website, which is allurebiz.com.
ALLUREBIZ.
Correct.
.com.
That's
All right.
correct.
So let's get back into the applicant tracking system and what a company should be doing.
Right. So obviously, the actual posting gets placed on the applicant tracking system. Before the commercial break, I was talking about job questions or knockout questions.
Right.
Very important. And for every position, you have to, as an employer, ask questions that the applicant will be forced to answer on the applicant tracking system. And then you can review the way they answer those questions. Now, you got to make sure that those questions are legal. You know what I mean? It's like you can't ask a question, or are you pregnant, or are you disabled, or anything like that, or what's your religious affiliation.
Right.
However, you could ask questions about, well, the schedule for the position is XYZ from this time to this time and these days. Can you work during those days? Have you ever been terminated from a company? Have you ever been suspended? Have you ever had a physical altercation with anyone, or a verbal altercation? Now, one may assume that the person's going to go ahead and answer those questions in a way that, they're going to say, of course not, whatever, when it's true. But you'd be surprised that people normally feel bad about lying on an application, because it is a terminable offense once it gets discovered. Remember, they have to remember also that it's going to be reference checks and things of that nature done, and background checks and all that stuff. So anything that's on the public record, or anything that a former company can provide that current employer or the new employer will be basically taken into consideration as a matter of record. And if someone is discovered to be lying on that application, they can be terminated for misrepresenting themselves. So that is very important to ask those questions. And there's a bunch of different other questions as well, depending on the position. Are you certified if you are an HR professional or an IT professional? What's your certification like, and things of that nature. So what does that do for the recruiter and the leaders of that company? Well, what it does, it gives them the opportunity to review the application, review the resume, review the knockout questions. Now, I also encourage employers to add a behavioral type of assessment, to basically demonstrate their honesty. Are they dependable? Their candidness and so forth on certain things. And there's a lot of assessment tools. I usually use selective hiring as one. That's a good one. You could test them also on other things like Excel, Word, and customer service, leadership, supervision, and things of that nature. And that's another piece. That's why I love the technology, and I believe that it's so important. So if you're out there in an organization and you are basically just having an application filled out in writing, and that's just extent to that, understand that you can do more for pretty much a fraction of a cost. It'll help you. It'll save you a lot of time on, reviewing applicants, because some positions, depending on how many job boards you get, some positions you may get thousands of resumes.
I've done that in the past. Sent out job posting and then just been inundated with job applications, and I think it's worth your time. How valuable is your time to you, and how much time should you be spending on your business as opposed to looking for a new candidate?
Right.
If you're the business owner,
you want to make sure you get the right candidate.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So So it's very important. And unfortunately, on the negative side of technology, you have this, our good old phones, and what happens is you get, okay, here's a job that came available. Okay, it's for a, medical executive assistant and what have you. Well, you may not be looking for the job requirements or the minimum qualifications. You just start applying. So therefore, it builds the number of applications. So the more tools you have on the vetting process is going to basically help you weed out what will eventually be or potentially be a toxic employee. So all those tools are great. I always say your time, like you just said a little while ago, it's valuable. So who are you going to bring into the interview? So do everything as much as you can by the phone or by the vetting process before you bring them in. And then what do? Well, you bring in the top 4. Why not top 3? Why not top 2? Because in essence, you're going to be surprised that what you think is the number 1, 2, and 3 applicants, the 4th one, for some reason, sometimes sneaks up on you and it impresses you. I have a current client that just hired a senior HR generalist for their company. And the first 3 people were great, but the 4th one is the one that shined the most at the interview. So that was really good. Presentation, I mean, they follow my advice, which is a good thing, which is have them present. It's a stressful situation for them, but if they're comfortable, then they're going to be the right choice for you. So that's become more of a behavioral type of assessment. So bring in only the top 4. So if you have 3 positions to fill, bring the top 12. Just consider 1 position and the 4 applicants for each and so forth. In those type of scenario when there's more than 1 position with the same title, it's usually like a customer service rep or some kind of, warehouse worker or something to that effect. So in essence, you want to be selective, very selective as to who you're going to hire. Actually, Peter Forbes wrote in one of his books once, he said, do not be afraid, and this is important, do not be afraid to say no to the good applicants. Have the courage to say yes only to the best applicants. In other words, you see somebody that's good and you really, really like them, then take it easy. You still got 2 or 3 more people to interview, and you'd be surprised the success that one will bring into the organization by bringing in the right people, So technology is extremely, extremely important on that. The personality is of the managers and the leaders and heck, even the HR professionals will matter as well. So here's what I mean by this. So let's say you have a potentially toxic employee or one that may give you a little trouble. Right? One that probably you may not notice on the interview too much, but you may find little flags here and there that potentially they have a tendency of talking back to authority. Okay? But then you have the person interview them, which is one of your supervisors or leaders that, is a little short with people. That they themselves are not the cream of the crop in their behavior. So then you have 2 negatives. It's like 2 trains colliding. You got to be very careful with that. So who is going to be interviewing? Who is going to be basically making the decision on that? You got to know who those individuals are. And at that point in time, if they need training, whether they say they don't need it or not, you as an organization have to make sure that you eliminate or reduce the risk greatly by making sure you have trained professionals doing the interviewing process and so forth. And of course, you also have to teach them what questions to ask and not to ask and all that stuff.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're running a little bit out of time here, but I do want to ask you, can you describe what a perfect company and by comparison a perfect employee would be or look like?
Well, when it comes to, number one, there's no such thing as a perfect, really anything. You know what I mean? Not in this world anyways. But you have companies out there that do a lot of things right. So a company that invests on their people would be a great company. A company that says, it costs a little money to do this, but it's not about the bottom line of what it costs. It's more about the return of investment that they do. For example, companies that invest in employee company picnics, the holiday parties, when they celebrate promotions, if someone gets promoted, they celebrate anniversaries and birthdays. Of course, not everybody wants to have their birthdays celebrated or recognized. So you ask that at the very beginning with, the new hire orientation process for volunteers. Okay, we normally do this on a monthly basis. We have a cake, and also for the anniversaries. And we celebrate. We put your name out there. You don't have to do anything embarrassing or anything. Just your name's going to be there. It's okay to do that. Well, there's other things as well. Companies can invest in a learning management system. Now, that's critical. Why?
That sure is.
Because you're saying to your employees that I care about your development. You may hire someone to be an executive assistant or a secretary. That term is even never used again. But they may turn out to be 5, 10, 15 years from now, vice president of organization. So how do they get there? A lot of times companies invest on their education. Go and get a degree and go do this. But if you have an in-house learning system, and it works great with contact centers that have several levels within that department, you invest on, you create like some kind of university within the organization. So anything that's going to give an employee success, recognition, I think companies should do, And by doing so, they'll end up, having very loyal staff. Now, you asked about perfect employees. It's simple. I will say to anybody who's listening that's an employee that may not be so happy in the workplace, I would say, a lot of times we are mad at, maybe a boss or being passed up for a promotion or something to that effect. So what I would tell them is leave the emotions at the door.
Also, I would tell them to get a hold of you.
Yeah.
Right?
Get a hold of you correctly. I'll definitely will help you out in any way, shape, or form.
Dan, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. But I really want to get the word out. How is someone supposed to get a hold of you?
Right. And thank you so much for the time. It's been an honor being here and speaking to the audience out there. And thank you for having me. Okay.
Thank you so much. Again, my name is Yolanda Santana. You can reach me at 561-819-5396 and Dan at 561-654-3141. Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful evening.
Good night.
Good night.
This has been Tell Us Your Business, where a special guest comes on every week and tells us what they do. All shows can be seen on amp2.tv, and if you wish to be a guest, call 866-224-5422 and tell us about your business. That's 866-224-5422. This has been an amp2.tv production.